Kevin.
Hello. Yes.
Snuck in the back door.
Appeared.
Okay.
Been in this room for a while.
Yeah, what's it feeling? Because it was a 3-week gap.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, welcome everybody. Good to see everybody again. I'd like to just start by thanking Councillor Payne for taking the chair for the June 20th meeting. I was away in Victoria at some meetings, so thank you again to Councillor Payne for directing the cow 3 weeks ago. Yes, it does seem like a long time since we have gotten together. So I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gathered is the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, the Syilx, and the Sinixt people, and is home to the Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. Councillors, are there any late items? Seeing none, moving on, if I could have an adoption of the agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Payne. I believe I saw the hand go up. All those in favor? And that carries. And I'd like to acknowledge that Councillor Page has, I would say, dropped in, but he's hanging over all our heads currently, remotely, as he is in Vancouver, I believe, attending to his work as president of AKBLG at the UBCM. Item number 6, we are having a workshop tonight. And so I see that we have someone in the chair there, and we are looking at Waterfront Central Long-Term Vision. So over to you.
Great. Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
Oh, thank you. And just before you start, Councillor Page, can you hear all of us? Okay.
Excellent. Maybe I'll just wait till it's up on the screen. Great. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay. Yeah, good afternoon, Council. So based on another application that you'll be seeing later this evening, I'd just like to have a quick workshop with you and give you a bit of background context on one of Nelson's neighborhoods. So that's Nelson's Waterfront Central neighborhood. And I'd just like to go through one of our guiding documents, which is the Sustainable Waterfront and Downtown Master Plan, and what that says about this neighborhood and what it speaks to the long-term development, what it says about the long-term development for Nelson's Waterfront. So that's what we'll move into here. So what this plan actually says is essentially it outlines a new vision for Nelson's Waterfront, and this plan was integrated into the OCP in 2013. So this is actually a good look into what types of development we're seeing with the current OCP that we have. Considering that we're going into updating our OCP, this is a good example of what we're seeing from the last one, what kind of foundation we have for development already. So the plan also envisions this vibrant, thriving, connected neighborhood that maximizes the utility of the lakeshore and envisions a mixed-use, sustainable neighborhood of sorts with housing and commercial. It's also planned to be a community hub that supports the downtown, where residents can quickly access their daily needs from walking and cycling, whether that be within the neighborhood or whether that be a trip to the downtown. And it's therefore it creates this pedestrian-focused environment that encourages that walking and cycling while also accommodating the existing streetcar, transit, and motor vehicles. So that's kind of the general idea of the central waterfront neighborhood. So this is a quick map here. So the scope of work for this document is quite large. It's all of our downtown and all of our waterfront. And number 7 there is the current neighborhood that we're looking at today. So in that green boundary. So those are the properties that we'll be considering for this presentation.
So we don't have a copy of this.
That's correct. So this neighborhood that we're considering is bound by Hall Street and Poplar Street, and also by Front Street and the lakefront. So how this all came to be is this was a long-range community planning exercise for Nelson's Waterfront. considering that we are developing within our boundary, within our city boundary, rather than building new infrastructure, new roads, and new servicing to sprawl the city and annex new land. So that all of this work is coming from working within the existing footprint that we have for Nelson. So it was based on a significant amount of community engagement for the Path to 2040 Sustainability Plan, which was done in 2010. There was a considerable amount of public engagement for that project, and that led to a lot of the goals and objectives in the Waterfront and Downtown Plan. So what all of this work led to was a variety of goals for key community planning areas like land use, built form, transportation, parks and recreation, environment, and economic development. So all of the feedback from the community and best practice research and all of this work has led to rezoning this Waterfront Central neighborhood to the MU2 zone, which was a new zone. And that's a mixed-use neighborhood for directed towards residential and commercial land uses. So part of that work and some of the feedback that came out of the engagement for the Path to 2040 plan was some of these main principles, these guiding principles, which are cultural strength, robust ecosystems, prosperity, healthy neighborhoods, and resiliency. So these principles were based on the feedback from the community and compared with best practice, and that's ultimately what led to the design of this zone and the rezoning of these properties along the waterfront. And we can see just in this map here, if you can see my cursor here, in this kind of orangey peach color, we can see the 5 different properties along the waterfront in the central waterfront neighborhood here. So we have the YRB lands, we have the Kootenay Landing site, which is currently being redeveloped, as well as a couple other industrial sites here, which is 900 Simpson Road and 920 Simpson Road, and then Chakamaika Mall as well. So all of those at the time were rezoned to the MU2 zone, so set with a vision for residential and commercial land use.
Yeah,
Yes, Councilor Wood.
thank you. Through the chair. Could you go back to the last slide?
Sure.
So there is building limitations, right, around the mall area. Is that correct? Like it's quite, what did I say? Can't handle huge amounts of load. Is that correct?
Right,
Parking
that's
lot
right.
area?
Yeah, that's right.
So with this plan, that would be modified?
Yes, there's site-specific regulations for that, and there's if that property were to be redeveloped, then there would be a variety of site-specific requirements for engineering and what the actual development capacity is for that land.
But as it stands now, it can just handle what it can handle, which is the parking lot.
Correct, yeah.
For weight.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think it's, all that area is brownfield development, right?
Yeah.
So the mall area was landfill. The Kulos property, I think, was a dump site for the sawmill for sawdust, et cetera, is all through that. I think YRB might be similar, so you have to have, as you are aware with the Kulos property, there's still sawdust under there, so they built on piles.
Right.
So
So it'd be like that kind of development.
yeah, you either remove the material out that's there and put in, structural fill, or you build on piles. So I don't know I assume the mall had to be built on piles or something similar. Or maybe that part of that site wasn't landfill. That was before my time. I don't know if Janice, if you,
I can't quite remember, did we?
but I
Or was
think.
it pulled back far? It might be that's pulled back far enough.
Yeah, it might not be on the landfill part of that site, but yeah, and especially back at that time, it just wouldn't have been it would have been cost prohibitive versus what you were selling that land for to build in that style. The Superstore right here is built on piles. Our workshop is built on piles. So that's why this land takes a while to develop. Is it's not easy land to, even though it's flat. It's because of the water table, because of the contamination, the soils, it takes special, you can't build conventionally.
Thank you. Thank you.
So some of the key neighborhood elements that are existing today, we're seeing a mix of industrial and commercial land uses. So we have a hotel, we have the Yellowhead Road and Bridge Yard, the Kootenai Landing Site, Chacamaca Mall, and some other businesses. And what we're seeing for the transportation side of things, primarily car-centric transportation modes, a combination of collector and local streets, and then limited pathway and pedestrian infrastructure and minimal cycling infrastructure, and also that existing streetcar line too. So that's kind of what we're seeing currently, and compared to the key neighborhood elements from the vision of the document is that mixture of residential and commercial land. So multi-family housing types, upwards of 600 units potentially for this neighborhood. Local serving retail included as well, so yeah, restaurants and shops. But one of the primary principles was to maximize the public amenity space, so civic spaces and parks and opportunities for people to recreate and gather there, so public art, things like that. All of this in order to activate the waterfront and utilize this beautiful section of our city. For transportation, also seeing a mixture of healthy mode options.
Just, and that is why Hall Street was identified as a key amenity in that area. It is the one that was controlled by the city, that we could create that amenity to be that kind of focal point where everything else would spur off from. So that's why that one was super key. If you read the downtown master plan, it's I think it hit 9 of the 10 outcomes that were trying to be achieved at the time, the whole Hall Street corridor. So those are, these are the documents that, that your planning staff are using when and other staff are using when we're looking at, whether they're amenities, whether they're developments. And I think it's really important to understand that, these are long-term visions, right? And we have to figure out what happens in the interim, right? We have, existing businesses, we have existing buildings, and prices ultimately prices have to go to a place where it's viable to incur those higher building costs in these areas. The Kulos development, it says up there up to 600 units. I think at that first, when the downtown waterfront plan was developed in the OCP and the zoning changes, that development, I think, was over 230 units plus there, and it took, another 10 years, as you can see from here, for it to develop out, and they just couldn't make it work. The cost to, build that density just didn't make sense. It went through a number of owners and finally got to a place where there was a viable project there, which finally came forward, but it reduced some of that density that the original plan is, and that's what community planning is. It creates that vision, and then it's when you get site specific about a particular development, then you start to unravel kind of what's viable and what's not viable.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So, and part of that vision for transportation is to maintain and increase the connectivity between this waterfront central neighborhood and with the downtown, while also increasing that walking and cycling infrastructure, because we're trying to create this mixed-use neighborhood. So a lot of those trips that are being generated in that neighborhood are hopefully going to be able to be taken walking, cycling, or some other mode. And part of that is extending the waterfront multi-use pathway and potentially exploring extending the streetcar network as well. So, and then just on the bottom right there, we have a quick little just schematic of what Lakeside Drive could look like. So a nice complete street design here, some vehicle traffic, we have the tram there, we have plenty of pedestrian space with the multi-use path, and then we have kind of that activated commercial space right along the street, or potentially residential space too. So that's kind of the general vision for what they are looking for. So a current development that's currently undergoing, as we know, is 900 Lakeside Drive. So that's approximately 90 multifamily units. So that has the mixture of residential and commercial space that we're looking for in this plan, while also some other public amenities as well. So the development of Cedar Street, the marina with a restaurant, some other public amenity space. So developing and extending that multi-use pathway along the lakeshore, and some other public civic space as well. So this type of development aligns with the Sustainable Waterfront and Downtown Master Plan, and also just with this general vision for the Waterfront Central neighborhood. It potentially activates the neighborhood, and potentially will spur more development and interest and investment in this area, and also encourages that walkability and bikeability for the trips that will be generated in this neighborhood. So
I have a question for Councillor Page. Payne. Jeez. I'm looking at him up there, and I'm looking at the...
Fair enough, I'm good with that. I'm interested around encourage walkability and bikeability, because I think when we initially looked at this plan, there wasn't a lot of walking paths and cycling. So has that been changed? Is that... I don't see anything different up there than what we originally looked at.
do you mean this particular site plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that what we're looking at 900 Lakeside Drive now? And it says
Yeah,
encourages
that's right. So-
walkability and bikeability. So
Yeah, so there's kind of two sides to it. So there's greater walkability and bikeability in Nelson, so that comes from developing within our existing boundary.
Okay,
So
but
increasing,
not this particular development.
but within this exact development, there are some off-site improvements along Lakeside Drive to increase the walking infrastructure. So building that multi-use path, new sidewalks, and that multi-use path will be for biking as well.
Okay, but getting from Simpson Road, I guess, to the lake, that was one of the challenges that I think we saw around parking when we first looked at this. So I just wanted to know if there had been any changes around that, and it sounds like not at the moment.
Yeah, I think the sidewalk on the east side, is it? Yeah. So now there's
There's a
no,
sidewalk
there's a
beside the
sidewalk beside the
buildings,
buildings.
or-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
Be a sidewalk,
Yeah.
but it's not on here, but there's supposed to be one.
Okay, so
I
the
think the
parking.
sidewalk's is it on the building side, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Building side right there.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
sidewalk.
There previously wasn't a sidewalk in that
Yeah.
location. They've added one
Got
now
it.
based
Okay.
on council's comments in the
Thank you,
last
that's
round.
what I was
Yeah.
trying to see, and
I
it's,
Yeah.
it's far for me.
Yeah.
Fair enough, yes.
I mean,
And it's
very-
hard for me to see that
It's
one,
very
so.
skinny on that.
Yeah.
It's very skinny on that drawing.
Well, as long
Yes,
as you can
that
get
is-
a stroller or wheelchair down it, it
Yes,
works.
that's the new sidewalk infrastructure.
Thank you.
Councillor Page, then Councillor Lockenberg.
I got to move a little bit between screens here. I guess this is only really occurring to me now, but in that conversation I've had before about the buffer off of the waterfront and how generous we want to have that be, the road there just comes to a complete end when it hits the mall parking lot. The road has no right of way that continues through and around to funnel out where the save-on is. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. There's no public road through the mall parking lot. It's a private road. It's a parking lot. It
I
is
think-
identified on our future roads maps, that if they did come in for rezoning or subdivision or a temporary use permit, we could ask for a road dedication at that time.
And I think the
And-
traffic studies identified that Hall Street, from a vehicle perspective, can manage that traffic from that development. So that's why it could be built without, further road dedication, I guess. Sorry.
Councillor Page, did that answer your question? Thank you. Councillor Lockenberg's taking a pass. Councillor Payne.
Just a quick, Councilor Lochtenberg may be able to answer this, but I believe at one point in time, transit went down there and actually went down to the Prestige and then down that road. Now they go a different route, but that's a choice that just transit makes, right? Because at some point in time, it'll make more sense to do it a different way. Sorry, that's not even a question. I apologize. I'll take that back, rub it out. But yeah, I remember the bus at one point in time, I could actually get to the Prestige on the bus, and now it is a block away. It's not the end of the world, but it's not as user-friendly as it used to be, and it still ends up in the same place at the mall. So I was just wondering why transit did that, but I can ask offline.
Anybody else have any questions right now? Okay, back to you, Matt.
And another development project that's currently underway is at 920 Simpson Road, so the ramp auto body building. So this is also zoned the same zone, MU2. So also plays into that same vision of that mixed-use, commercial, residential type of land use. So it's also a legal non-conforming use currently, so it doesn't align with the current zoning. It doesn't, the current use doesn't fall within that MU2 zoning, but it is legally allowed to operate as that's how it's been existing. And they've been applying for a temporary use permit, and the kind of long-term vision of the property that the applicant has would be aligning with that MU2 zoning. So it would be looking to redevelop the property in the long term to align with that vision of this neighborhood. So
Yeah, and I think that's a really good example of, having that long-term vision, but, being practical until that point in time. Obviously that's a built building that has, needed use in our community, and it makes sense for it to continue with that use until such time it makes sense to redevelop it, and when it redevelops, then that new zoning allows it to develop in the, within that vision that this community has for it.
yeah. So in conclusion here,
Hang on. Councillor Lockenberg, then Councillor Pinero.
I can wait till the conclusion.
Okay,
Come up.
Councillor Pinero.
Well, I mean, just with the last property. Yeah, so that, I think, I don't know if everybody else got the email yesterday about this, so are we talking about that later?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is more of a workshop. We'll talk about that specifically later. Yeah.
yeah, in conclusion, we're seeing that the waterfront central neighborhood is clearly a very important piece to redeveloping Nelson's waterfront, and it is beginning to develop now. We're seeing this with 900 Lakeside Drive and potentially this new property as well. So, and these redevelopments are in alignment with the Path to 2040 sustainability plan and the sustainable waterfront and downtown master plan. And these current developments could potentially act as a catalyst for new developments within this neighborhood or for adjacent neighborhoods. So that's kind of the large overarching vision for this section of the city, and kind of the long-term vision that we've had for some time. And this is sort of the type of development that we have been seeing under this current OCP. So potentially there's opportunity for informing the new OCP with these types of developments. So that is everything.
Councillor Lockenberg.
Thank you, Chair. So one of the things that I'm not totally clear on, but I think it's in the Waterfront Development Master Plan or the previous OCP, is the airport. And the airport's referenced in one of the two or both documents as a land bank. And I think that's something to, when we do this OCP review, just to keep in mind, if only to set expectations about what the vision of previous councils and the city has been in the past, and what it can be going forward. I don't want us to get locked into tunnel vision on it was an aerodrome, it will be an aerodrome, it will always be an aerodrome. It might be, but at this point it's also a land bank and potentially an important area for development in the future should future councils or city so decide. Just wanted to raise that before we move on.
Councillor Tate.
I have an easy question. So on that waterfront master plan, it talks about Lakeside Drive running across private property. Is that only the section that's like actually a parking lot in the mall, or is there other sections of Lakeside Drive that are run across private property?
No, I believe that's the only section that runs across private land.
Thank you.
Yeah, just Lakeside Drive ends at the mall. So it's,
Yeah, that's what I was understanding
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
but I was
yeah,
reading it
we
a
just
bit
don't have any
differently.
road going through to connect to Poplar on the other side. Is
Right.
I understand.
Councillor
So-
Panero?
So, but if when this close development is done and there's people living in that spot, what's the forecast for through traffic through the mall parking lot, and is that a sustainable situation? Like when people start driving through there because they live there? And
well, right now it's, the legal road is Hall Street. It's been designed for that traffic to go on Hall Street. We can't, the private landowner, the mall, has authorities to, to control traffic through their property. But, that development's been developed that traffic is to go on Hall Street, not through the mall. But
right,
obviously
Hall
we
Street's
can't.
sort of our safety valve in that situation.
Well, Hall Street's designed, those, the new lights, et cetera, that were put on Hall Street were designed to be able to pick up that traffic. And that is one of the reasons, that was one of the practical reasons why that development ended up not developing out to, 230 units. If it did that, then Hall Street wouldn't have been able to handle that traffic. It would have had to, we don't have, access through the mall, so we would have had to build Cedar Street out onto the highway, which would have meant a controlled crossing at the CP tracks, a controlled light at Cedar Street, which would add millions and millions of dollars onto the infrastructure costs, which didn't make sense for even that density for that to be developed that way. And that's where you get down to that sort of site specific thing and going, okay, does this actually work? And the developer in the end said no, to get those additional units does not pay for the additional, all those other costs of what I'd have to do that. So.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, I want to thank Matt and Natalie for presenting. And I think that hopefully we're going to see them back as we also go through the OCP review. So, we're going to see more every time there's an opportunity to sort of have a little discussion about a little segment of the OCP. We're going to try to capture it. This workshop time that we have on our agendas is a kind of a perfect time to do these on a periodic basis as we go through the next year while we're doing the OCP. So, and then it gives everybody that might be watching or goes back to look at it on video, a little hint of what goes on in some of these areas. And, as much as it was changed in 2011 to MU2, I always think that we don't really know what the new plan might look like, but I think that this change that we made in 2011, I remember when this project took place, there was lots of comments and lots of visions about the waterfront. I mean, it's probably one of our most precious areas that we have in town. So I want to thank you again for that, and I look forward to what community or what section of town that you might look at next to come and do a little brief report out on what the OCP says about a specific area in town currently. So good education for everyone concerned. So thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7, we're going to be dropping into a closed meeting for a little bit. So those that are in the gallery have to leave. But I wish I could tell you how long we'd be.
We just need the part that we have.
I agree.
You're not contemplating when there's like 800 units on where the mall is.
What?
You want housing. You're not contemplating 50 years out when there could be housing completely on where the mall
I
is.
am always contemplating 50 years out, and
Yeah.
I think we won't necessarily be as committed to private automobiles 50
Right, we're
years out
not.
from now either.
We're online.
Okay.
I'm happy to say that online. I think 50 years from now, we may not be as committed to private automobiles as we are at this moment.
So I don't have a city manager. Are we on? Yep, thanks. I don't have a city manager's report, but I will just go first to the chief financial officer. If you have anything, updates or anything that you'd like to report? Or are you holding off for that first Q2 in September?
Well, we're doing it at the next COW meeting, actually. We're going to
Oh,
bring some,
excellent.
yep, so we'll bring, do a finance piece, of course, and hoping to get participation from Public Works and do a bit of a more holistic update on where we're at with certain capital projects and some of the things we talked about when we did our budget those many months back of here's the things that we're working on. So just give you an update of where we're at with those pieces as well as, you know, your usual finance update. So we'll do that at the next meeting.
Okay,
Yep.
excellent.
I did have one just kind of, oh, sorry.
Is it an appropriate time to talk about any new grants that have come in on your next report?
Any new ones that have come in?
Yeah,
Okay.
if there, yeah.
If there are any, you mean, just to mention those? Yep.
And say where they're headed and,
Yep, for sure.
thank you.
Okay. yeah.
So just when, if it
Yeah.
can, while I'm got the mic here, there was some transit updates. There was we had that West Kootenai Transit Committee meeting. I don't know, was it last month? And the thought was to get the minutes of that meeting into the agenda here, but I understand talking to Gabe that we normally do that only after those minutes are approved. So we would have to wait until the next West Kootenai Transit meeting, and those don't happen too frequently. So I just wanted to give like a couple updates from that meeting. One piece, and Councillor Lochtenberg can jump in anytime if he thinks that there's something that was relevant to discuss, but I think the two key pieces I had jotted down here were just to kind of reiterate the fact that, you know, the national holidays are holidays, so that's the Truth and Reconciliation Day on September 30th would be a stat holiday. So there would be no transit service on that day. And the other piece was that we talked about what would the free transit days be. So we kind of identified a few, or the committee did, identified a few days that would be free transit days, just so that we're on board with BC Transit. Sometimes these things get, you know, lost in the shuffle and we don't do a great job of promoting them. So if we kind of get them on the radar there, we can kind of work with Ginger and work with BC Transit and RDCK and kind of promote these a little bit better. So, you know, those days would be, of course, any of your election days, with, you know, federal, provincial, local, municipal election days. Earth Day, Go By Bike Week, Clean Air Day, and Seniors Day. And I would have to kind of look back and see exactly when those days are. Earth Day, I think, is April 22nd, and Go By Bike Week is kind of that end of May, beginning of June period, but I'd have to check on some of those other ones. But those would be the pieces, and then we could build out a communications plan and just let folks sort of know about all those days.
So,
Yep.
Go By Bike Week isn't
Yes.
a day.
Yes.
So are we giving free, are we giving free transit
Profound.
for the week?
Yes, I guess these would be free transit periods or free
Okay,
transit
so that would be a
events.
week of free
Yes.
transit, okay.
Yeah.
I thought New Year's Eve was also free, is that not?
That one
We
didn't
don't run
come up,
late
but-
night like
Yeah,
Vancouver or
that's a fair
something like
point.
that does, so.
Yeah, I remember in the Lower Mainland, they would run the buses
Bus.
quite late and
Okay.
I
have
think
that
that's
free
always
one.
the tough part, is that you get the big news blast and it's all about Vancouver and SkyTrain and the transit system and TransLink, and then you're thinking like, oh, well, there's gonna be that, well, we've never run a bus at 2 AM from outside the Hume Hotel on any day, let alone New Year's Day, so,
Hard to get home after a movie.
Yeah.
On this- on the bus, trust me.
so, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's all I had.
And so, I was just gonna go over to, sorry, you weren't in the room, so. General Manager Johnson, do you have anything that you would like to report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll provide some updates on a couple of projects that we have going and just a bit of a general update on Public Works. There have been councillors that have been requesting, and we've heard a fair amount about the Salvation Army staircase that's been under construction of sorts for a time. So just to provide an update to council on that, the plan is to be done in September. We understand that There is a business there, the dance studio, that will be restarting their classes sort of when school's in, I think about the second week into September. So we're certainly shooting to have that complete. And so that should alleviate the issue, the current situation being that those stairs are attached to the building and provide a lot of covered areas for people to find refuge. And so we do have some of those folks that are experiencing homelessness finding refuge there and making it intimidating and difficult to access the dance studio. So that project is carrying along, and hope to have it done in time for the dance studio to open. The Front Street house that is being slated for demolition, we did go to market for that, and all of the quotes that we got back were quite high. So we're going to wait until the fall. We did end up putting it out later, like basically into construction season, and what you see then is a lot of people saying, oh sure, we'll do that for you, but because we got a busy thing, you're going to pay a premium. So the plan will be to post that sort of in the fall, early winter, and leave it open until June so that people can slot it into their time. Other items, finally, I think, or a couple more on the public works side of things. There's real success out at the wastewater treatment plant. So those that came on the tour saw that the RBCs, I believe it's some rotating biomass contactors, big wheels that are going around as part of the treatment train. One of them was broken. We thought we were going to have to replace it. There's up to $600,000 in the budget to replace that. We have managed, or I should say the team out there and the engineering team has figured out a solution, a sort of in-place solution to rebuild the RBC that was broken, and are actually moving on to rebuilding some of the other ones. And we anticipate that while it's been incredibly successful, and we anticipate that we will be able to actually rebuild a couple others that will significantly sort of extend the life of those RBCs, where we once thought that we were going to replace one pack for $600,000. We're now able to replace that, and then we are working on, I believe, a second one, and significantly less amount of money. So really, really fantastic work done by the folks out at the treatment plant, and our the public works and engineering teams, or sort of utilities and engineering teams that are looking for these creative solutions, and not afraid to bring it in and kind of made for a couple of stressful days when they were trying things out and they weren't working, and what are we actually doing here, but then they got it nailed down and things are flying. So I saw
Councillor Woodward and then Councillor Payne.
And Councillor Page as well.
Oh, Councillor Page. Okay, so we'll start with Councillor Page. You had your hand up?
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Johnson, on that update for the stairs. This is one of those situations where we have an old civic building that has attached stairs and now being used as part of a public walkway. We had a situation over at the Sharon Nelson a number of years ago that was similar. When we're reconstructing this project as we envision it, are we simply putting back this inflated version of stairs that are attached to a private building, or are we contemplating how we separate those out and work with the building owners to move their interior traffic interiorly, like many other buildings might do, because of this inherited situation that we may not want to keep and passing down to another generation when the next stairs need to be replaced? Like, how are we envisioning the final repair in that corridor?
Through the chair, option B. We are removing it from the building. We're actually part of the wait time has been relocating the entrance to the Salvation Army on the Vernon Street level there, because currently it does come off of the staircase in that landing.
Yeah.
It will all be removed. So the new staircase will be detached from the building. It will be a municipal asset, and we will put that new doorway in on Vernon. And the dance studio has its landing access there, so that's not an issue.
Great.
Councillor Woodward, then Councillor Payne.
Thank you. Over to the wastewater treatment plant. Are we rebuilding the frames of those RBCs, or are we actually replacing the entire units?
Replacing parts on the frames, as I understand it. I haven't been out there to see it, but yeah, they ended up bringing in some millwrights that had been working out at Tech that thought they could tackle it. And so they brought them in, ended up actually pulling the whole panel of the roof off, lifting it out, and then while they had it lifted out, replacing the pieces. And then now they're replacing the media packs as well while they're doing that. So essentially we're getting brand new RBCs in place. We, at the $600,000 budgeting, we understood once it was budgeted that we were actually going to be, well into $1 million to replace a full one. Yeah. So it's a really big coup, and especially when you look at the idea that, so you replace a full RBC that has, a 20 or 30 year lifespan, but we are planning on not using it for that long, right? So, it's a really difficult thing to sort of think through, and again, kudos goes to the crews that worked through that and sort of worked through the frustrations to get to this good outcome.
Thank you. It's great news.
Councillor Payne.
I have two, if that's okay. So the Front Street house, we always talk about demolition. We know with climate change, greenhouse being better uses of our resources, that deconstruction is the way that many organizations are going. I mean, banks are incentivizing for deconstructing so we don't have as much waste. We talk about waste in a lot of different ways, but construction waste is huge. I don't know that there's anyone here in the Kootenays that actually is doing deconstructing. Is that something that we could look at, think of, or is that just too far out for now? Just a thought?
I think that house is highly contaminated, which is a problem with deconstruction, where materials would be then utilized in some other aspect or area. It's one of the biggest problems with that house. I believe some asbestos was taken out at some point, but that house is contaminated as part of the issue with
Contaminated in...
probably
different
with
materials, lead
probably more
paint,
asbestos.
Asbestos.
Okay, just wanted to put it on the radar because I
So
think
we
it's
did-
a way that, we know that the construction industry is a huge source of waste, and as much recycling and composting that we want to do, we're not going to even touch it if we don't look at that as well. So I think it's something that we could look at in our development services, because right now all you can get is a demolition permit. You can't get a deconstruction permit. If that's okay, that's just a thought, putting on the radar. The second one is, I love the story of the wastewater treatment plant. I would love to see that in my Instagram, on Facebook. This is how the incredible staff we have here at the city is saving you tax dollars. This could have cost us this much, but the creativity and ingenuity of that team has really made a huge difference so that we can spend, just about lost it there. But yeah, that's the sort of good news story that I think when you're deep in it, you don't always see it. But I believe there are, taxpayers out there who would really want to know. They're always, maybe I'm wrong, looking at how much the city is spending on certain things. But I think it's important to also demonstrate how much we're saving by doing that sort of thing. So I know it's challenging to fit that communication sometimes into the general plan of things when you're working so hard head down, but I think it's critically important to how we engage people in a lot of the work we do going forward. So I'd love to see that.
Thanks for the great recommendation.
And I think you have a second, Councillor Tate would probably support that because she wants.
I almost jumped out of my chair.
Yeah, it's good.
You're
So you got,
And so just a final part from the public works side of things, just so everybody has an understanding. So beginning in July, we had 2 summer students and 2 casuals come online. So just for reference, you'll see them out there. Summer students, we have one of them posted up that's going to be kind of managing Baker Street. So you'll see them working back and forth and providing a little bit more ongoing maintenance along Baker Street. And the other one is really going to be tied to a lot of gyro. I don't think that, especially with our Director of Municipal Operations being new, we didn't really understand how much that takes on a daily basis for all the cleaning, the skimming, you know, the balancing of chemicals, depending on what happens in the water on a given day, more balancing of chemicals. So anyways, those 2 students are going to be doing that. And then we have our 2 casuals in, which are really filling vacations at this time. And just for a bit of context, because it happened last night, everybody, I don't know if everybody got woken up by the rainstorm last night. So when you look at our municipal operations, we have, you know, a set number of resources. We assign those resources on a daily basis, but sometimes we have to reassign them based on emerging things. So as an example, last night with the rainstorms, as Mayor likely would have noticed up on the steeper hills, we had many laneways that blew out into streets. So now we're going to spend a good portion of the week reassigning staff that we're going to be doing other regular maintenance, sweeping up those laneways, bringing the dirt back into them. And so just to sort of paint that picture of the how dynamic we have to be in our public works municipal operations things to address this. Now the good news is we are going to be putting our dust control, the calcium chloride on, and normally we have to soak that to help it soak in. So now after that big rainstorm, we feel like we'll be able to get that dust control on the laneways and be a little quicker about it. So just a little snapshot into you know, a day in operations.
And
Councilor Woodward.
I clearly remember times when those storms would come in and then there'd be like a flood at Baker and Ward or something like that. And I just really want to connect that work over the last 10 years of putting in much larger sewer mains is really seeming to pay off, because these storms have rolled through quite a few times, and you're not dealing with that on top of everything else. So it's good, really good news.
I was just in that building this afternoon and walked by the poor vacuum repair person in the basement there going, oh, we're not flooding you out anymore. So it's good to know that.
Okay, I know dinner's here, but the corporate officer also has a brief report, and then when we come back after dinner, we'll do a few council reports if anybody happens to have one, and we'll let the city manager have his chance. So I'm just going to
Can I just make one quick comment on the storm that happened?
Right.
I really believe that every resident out there wants to help the city function well. And so I'm one of them. This morning I went out and I actually just cleared the goop off of my drain and put it on my lawn. And it's not a big thing. It took me 30 seconds. I was walking the dog anyway, so I just stopped. It's an easy thing to do. You can do it. You know where your storm drains are. Help us out. We're helping each other. Thanks.
Okay. I just wanted to give a quick update on the accessibility plan that the local governments are required to have as of September 2023. So I participated in a workshop in late June, and the provincial government has sort of relaxed their expectations about what local governments can realistically achieve by September. And they have also, this is actually kind of exciting for us, they've also they're providing some funding, and then there are some other granting opportunities on top of that to help us get going with the program, creating a program. So what they're looking for now is that we've got a plan for the plan. So that's sort of where we're at, and that's my update.
Thank you.
Yay.
Okay, if I could have a motion to recess for dinner, moved by the Councilor Lockhart, seconded by Councilor Woodward. All those in favor? And that carries. So we'll see everybody back at 7. Enjoy your dinner. Councilor Page.
Enjoy your dinner, guys.
She's so much. Are we off? It looks like we're on.
The UBCM.
Yeah,
one.
UBCM.
Yeah, no, I said to her today, I wanted to go on the canoe one. It's probably sold out by now, but that's okay because I'm going to Wild Site. So now I'm like,
Yeah, you're going to do the Wild Site weekend. Yeah.
we got an email from
It's from Keith, kind of.
Via
Keith,
Keith.
BLG.
Wild
Keith
Site is
today.
doing
A 3-day.
Indigenous look at an interpretation of the Columbia River. And so it's a 2-day camping.
2-night canoeing.
Canoeing and camping
I
on
know. I signed up right
weekend
away.
after the long. So
Oh,
September
yeah,
8th
I'm in
and
Revelstoke
8th,
that
9th, 10th,
weekend,
something
that's
like
right.
that.
Oh, shit.
To Granada.
Yeah, it's not a good time.
No.
No.
Keith is going.
I'm doing the harbor tour.
The harbor tour.
I'm going on the
is
harbor tour.
Really interesting if they're not on strike. Yeah,
Everyone's striking.
I know.
It'll be a different tour, that's for sure.
The longshoremen, they're not going to strike all summer. It's the longshoremen that are on strike, right? Yeah. I like that.
Okay, are we close? Are we?
No, we're not. One more minute.
You always want to meet a few longshoremen, because if you want to find a good party in Vancouver, find a longshoreman.
I've met longshoremen.
There's a lot in that. Say no more, say no more.
I'm so impressed they fit it on there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was when I look over for a name help, and I'm about to go infrastructure. No, that's not his name. There's a lot on there.
I have not opened this one yet either.
Oh, it suddenly got quiet.
Hush.
It is
means
the
an
hour.
angel flew over, right? Isn't that what that
the
means?
witching hour. Are we live? Okay, welcome back, everybody. Welcome, people in the gallery. Welcome to the media. So we're gonna pick up where we left off before we had our meal recess. And so, just double checking in. City Manager, did you have anything to report? Oh, could we? Sorry. I'm getting whispers in my ear that I'm sure everybody's now heard. Could I have a motion to reconvene, please? Councillor Woodward, second by Councillor Payne. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. And just for anybody that can't see him there in the little square, Councillor Page is joining us from Vancouver.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right, just a couple things. I was at a conference with my colleagues on the island, and there was quite a number of sessions on digitization, on cybersecurity, on AI, etc. So that's top of mind for local governments, and so was I got to certainly the challenges around homelessness in all our communities was front and center, and Nanaimo certainly is I met their person in charge, and they figure they have 700 people experiencing homelessness, and they have beds for about 100, and so it's it's definitely challenging in all our communities. So that some really good connections there, and some really good material there that we are looking at here. And speaking of IT, we have some significant new IT projects on our horizon. Everything, as from digitization to cybersecurity to NG911 to GIS. Chris and Nathan and I had a meeting today and just looking at how we better support that. What else? Councillor Payne and myself and Chris, were you there? I can't remember. Met with the Capitol Theatre folks around, they still have a goal to try to establish a black box theatre, and they're looking at some sites there. Exciting stuff, and we're committed to making some contacts for them to to see if they can find something viable. We continue to work with the Curling Association. They're still fundraising. I think hopefully people have heard some of the ads. There's an opportunity to to contribute to that project. They're looking at a shorter term solution to to ensure the sport continues in our community while they look at a larger solution. I think I'd talked to one of the RDCK reps there, has committed to help and fund that project as well, and they've done quite well on fundraising. We're working with various of our unions on, just wrapping up some collective agreements that we've negotiated recently, and, certainly police with, with recruitment and, their wellness as well. So good work there. We also met with the acting regional manager of MOTI to talk about the Whitewater Road, the potential sites for a new fire hall. So we did that as well. I did a quick tour at D-Pace this afternoon. They're looking at expanding their business quite substantially. It's super exciting, the work they're doing. I think they said this one product they build, they have I think 25 orders. They're $1 million a machine, so that that one product they sell is a multi-million-dollar business now. So right here in Nelson with cutting edge technology, I think they said they had 4 students through the what's the innovation center and trail called?
Stack.
Yes, so they employed 4 students out of that for 6 months, and they have research students from UBC and elsewhere, and they're doing cutting edge research right here in our small community. So it's super exciting to see the work they're doing, and they had connected with us to see if there was any, if we knew of any land or buildings that they could expand their business in. So exciting things, and obviously on the development front, it's exciting to see some of these sites that have been vacant for decades that develop on the Kulo site, the Mount St. Francis site, the one here on Vernon Street. So some really positive things that are happening in our community, and I think people are aware. There's the OCP has kicked off, and so there'll be a community consultation over the next year plus on that. The liquid waste management plan has also kicked off, and again, that's a big planning document for us as well. And as our GM stated earlier, we're doing some good work out at the current liquid or wastewater treatment plant to ensure we can do some repairs there that will buy us the time to find a site and upgrade to the to accommodate the the growth and the current load on that system. It's that was one of the first projects I actually did when I first came here 20 years ago was to do secondary treatment out there. So but those all 20 years has gone past, and that's those hardworking facilities like a wastewater treatment plant. There's a lot that goes through those. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, anybody anything to report? Anything exciting happening in anybody's life? Councillor Page, I'm going to start with you if you have anything to say, just because you're remote. You're all good? Okay, wow, look at this. The whole quiet crowd.
Okay,
Anyways.
I got something.
Okay,
Canada Day.
yeah.
Went
On
down
my
to
list.
Baker Street, flipped some pancakes. Didn't, they didn't need me. They had so many volunteers, but great photo op with the mayor and Councillor Tate, who are up there with the students from Selkirk Hospitality, I believe? No. Doing a
Postgraduate
great
Culinary
job.
Management.
It was crazy busy. Great to have that back, making money for the Lions to dispense throughout our community after their exciting presentation to council at the committee of the whole last time. That following weekend, I attended the Studis Indigenous Film Festival that the Nelson Civic Theatre Society put on. Excellent curation of films. that I learned a lot from. If you have an opportunity to see the movie Bones of Crows, it's just amazing depiction of the multi-generational journey in story form. So it's you get all the information and details that come together in a way that make it really easy to, not easy, it wasn't easy, but the film festival itself was amazing. It sounds like something that they will continue to do. If you see those films coming out, it's a tremendous opportunity just to get a deeper understanding of something that I've been trying to learn about for a long time, but every little bit helps. And the variety of films was also pretty extensive as well. So those were the two sort of highlights for me in the past few weeks. And other than that, it has been interesting having a 3-week between meetings. It seems like so long since we've been here with you all, but glad to be back.
Anybody else? Okay, I just have a couple of things. One is a happy announcement, and only because he's shy, but I'll brag for him. So I'd like to just announce that Jesse Pinero, our counselor, was selected to be national team coach for the Canadian boxing team, and that he will be off next month. He will unfortunately miss our August meeting, but I'd be missing the August meeting too if I could go to the Continental Championships in Cali, Colombia. So he will be leading our Canadian contingent there. So when he comes back for the September meeting, we'll be hoping to hear on the successes of Team Canada at the Continental Championships. So other things have been just the usual kind of day-to-day opportunities that present. I did do an Indigenous blanket exercise with quite a number of city staff and the police department last month. The police department board meeting from last month, it's always, police always comes one day after we have the business meeting. So tomorrow I do police board again, but last month's meeting went well. We continue to interview and hire police officers to replace some of those that have retired. We've got a new community safety officer who is liaising with community groups in the social service sector, as well as business, and with police, of course. And they're in the process of looking at a second community safety officer. And I think this will be great for downtown, another set of eyes and ears, so that we know what's going on. Nelson is busy, busy, busy. I drove down Front Street the other day and thought, okay, I need to go to Save-On. Well, the first exit was busy. The cars are lined up. The cars are lined up to the second entrance. So I went to the traffic light by the 7-Eleven to turn in to get to the Save-On Foods. So there are lots of people here and lots of people visiting. I had a lovely meet and greet with the one of the main people with Food Cycler about how our project is unrolling here. So everybody that's been picking up Food Cyclers seems to be very happy. Staff say that it's great, all the people that are coming in. Everybody's pretty excited to start with their Food Cycler. Canada Day was a blast. I actually got the icing out of my clothes after cutting the cake. I always have this trauma of red icing all over everything I own that's white that I then send off to the Positive Women's Apparel store because I do my best, but I can't get all the coloring out of it. So I think everybody had a good time at that. Kudos to the fire department for a great fireworks show. Lovely 15 minutes of fireworks on a very clear night. I actually, during the day there, I thought with the wind coming up when we were slicing that cake, that perhaps the fireworks would have had to been canceled due to the weather, but the weather was agreeable, calmed down, and we had lovely fireworks. A couple of other things, I've had a couple of meetings with MLA Anderson on a number of topics. I met with Dr. Vance who is one of the physicians locally that is involved with the OAT and fentanyl patch programs, so safe supply programs that run here in Nelson, to see if there's any advocacy work we can be doing to help him with his programming. What else is there? I think that might be it. I was at the Nelson Fentanyl Task Force meeting today. Lots of updates happening there, and yeah, I think that's it. I just wanted to comment on DPACE. I mean, Morgan Donnell, who's the principal there at DPACE, is another great Nelson success story. So Morgan was born and raised here in Nelson, went to UBC, achieved his PhD, and always said that I can prove that you can come from a small town and you can be successful and you can come back to your small town. And all the years I think of people that say, oh, my kids had to move away and they couldn't come back because there wasn't anything here that they could do. And I'm sort of thinking he's one of many who've been fortunate enough to come back. But it just goes to show that anything's possible when you come from Nelson, and even more possible when you come back to Nelson. So anyways, moving on with our agenda. We're on item number 11, request for 920 Simpson Road for a temporary use permit. The city has received an application for a temporary use permit from the new tenant of the ramp, body, and fender building located at 920 Simpson Road. The property has been operating as an auto body shop, a light industrial use, which does not conform to the current zoning regulations for the property. This business has been operating with a legal, non-conforming status. The applicant would like to operate a construction contractor company and commercial storage units on the property in the short term. The appropriate land use for these services is contractor services limited and commercial storage respectively. Since these are not permitted in the MU2 zone, TUP is required. And so council is now requested to pass a resolution to grant a temporary use permit, TUP, on the above mentioned lands for the applicant to operate these uses. We have before us a background and quite a bit of information, but we have Matt Kuzak from the planning department here to give us an overview and summary of the documents.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So, yeah, Development Services received a temporary use permit application for 920 Simpson Road. As the Mayor mentioned, it's to operate Contractor Services Limited and commercial storage on the property. So the current use is an industrial use, the auto body shop, which is a legal non-conforming use as it was rezoned to MU2. So essentially that use will be able to continue operating, but now that the property is listed for sale and has a potential tenant, now that use is looking to be changed. So the existing building does seem to be operating appropriately and is an appropriate function for the property, and is still operational. So staff are under the impression that it still makes sense to continue operating this building as it currently is, while also the applicant does understand the long-term vision that we went through together in the workshop earlier this evening about what the overall vision is for this neighborhood in Nelson, to become predominantly that residential, commercial, mixed-use type of neighborhood. So, and the applicant understands that is the long-term vision for the property, and that's where this neighborhood is moving towards. And potentially long-term, we could be seeing that property redeveloped in that fashion to align with all of our guiding documents that point towards that type of development. So, granting this TUP can also activate more long-term development in this neighborhood and in adjacent neighborhoods. And also, staff are recommending that a term statutory right-of-way agreement be placed on the lands. As we've discussed, a section of Simpson Road does encumber the private property of 920 Simpson Road. So in order to obtain rights to operate public access on that road, there needs to be a formal agreement in place. and a statutory right-of-way agreement is a good tool to utilize that. So through the issuance of a temporary use permit, the condition of a statutory right-of-way can be applied. So that is what staff is recommending. So through conversations with the applicant and the property owners, it's found to be most appropriate to set the term for the statutory right-of-way agreement to 3 years to match the temporary use permit. So both of those would be 3 years, and to allow staff to work with the applicant and the property owners in the meantime to sort out a perpetual long-term permanent agreement for either a different agreement or ownership of those lands in order to ensure that the city is able to manage, maintain, and take on responsibility for that road, as well as implement underground infrastructure and whatever else is required for long-term infrastructure planning for this neighborhood. So I'm happy to take any questions from council. We also do have the applicant here if you have any direct questions for them.
Seeing nothing, we have a recommendation on the floor. Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Lochinvar. Councillor Woodward, please.
The council approved the temporary use permit, file 2306001, to allow the applicant to operate Contractor Services Limited and commercial storage in the existing building located at Lot 2, Plan NEP 4104, District Lot 6004, Kootenay Land District, with the following conditions. That a term statutory right-of-way agreement be established on the lands occupied by Simpson Road for a 3-year period to the satisfaction of the City of Nelson between the property owner of 920 Simpson Road and the City of Nelson to be registered on title of the property.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that recommendation? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Matt. Okay. We have no delegations tonight. Moving on to bylaws. And so the city's EcoSave retrofit program bylaw provides loans to Nelson Hydro's urban city customers to fund energy retrofit projects and e-bike purchases. The loans are repaid through Nelson Hydro's on-bill financing. The bylaw set a cap for the aggregate of such loans issued by the city at an amount of $500,000. As that amount has been reached, staff are recommending that council amend the bylaw to raise the cap to $1 million. EcoSave retrofit program amendment bylaw number 3575 is now presented to council for adoption.
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, that's been moved by Councillor Lochinvar, seconded by Councillor Woodward. Any discussion, councillors? Seeing none, if you wouldn't mind reading the recommendation, Councillor Lochinvar.
That the Corporation of the City of Nelson EcoSave Retrofits Program Amendment Bylaw Number 3575-2023 be finally adopted.
Okay, seeing nobody looking like they've got their hand about to go up. All those in favor, opposed, and that carries. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item number 14. Item number A, climate and energy. The City of Nelson Climate and Energy Team is applying for grant funding under the Local Government Infrastructure Planning Grant Program administered by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs to support a greenhouse gas modeling exercise to outline the necessary actions needed to align our corporate operations with our aspirational corporate carbon reduction target approved within the city's climate plan, Nelson Next. The outcome will be a net zero municipal energy and emissions plan, a MEEP, I guess, versus a REAP. Whoa. This net zero MEEP will create clarity about greenhouse gas reduction pathways on a sector-by-sector basis. For example, fleet, buildings, waste collection. Support the creation of a sector-specific annual corporate carbon reduction target, support long-term planning for low-carbon resilience, and enhance monitoring and evaluation of corporate climate actions and progress. The MEEP will also outline high and low emission reduction pathways, identify barriers, and outline co-benefits. As part of the grant application process, a council resolution is required that supports the, oh, I knew that was coming, the LGIPG grant application and overall grant management. Boy, they couldn't make these acronyms any more painful, could they?
Nope.
Move.
Or longer. They're getting
Yeah,
longer.
moved by Councillor Woodward. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Page. Councillor Woodward.
Whereas council supports the development of net zero municipal energy and emissions plan, MEEP for Nelson, therefore be it resolved that staff be authorized to apply for a $10,000 grant funding under the Ministry of Municipal Affairs Infrastructure Planning Grant Program, and further the City of Nelson staff be responsible for the overall grant management.
Any questions or concerns, Council? Councillor Payne.
So I guess just a point of clarification. So this is not something that we have been doing. It is in Nelson Next that we will do it, but we haven't been doing it thus far. And that's why we need a grant to hire someone to do it.
Well, I think,
Am I?
I think Nelson Next identified a bunch of strategies. We did do some modeling on those things, but again, the technology, everything changes so quickly, and that's 2-3 years ago now. So this is really just pulling all that together and saying, relooking what's the best, the most effective strategy forward. So just kind of re-looking at that previous work, what's the best pathway to go with in trying to meet our goals.
So I guess I just need to understand. So this fits under what I would consider to be carbon budgeting, and whether we're meeting those.
Well, we've set targets to
okay.
for to reduce our emissions, and so this is really developing this a strategy here. We should do this in fleet, this in buildings, this in this sort of order.
So that we have
really
hard
what we're trying-
targets, so we know that we're accomplishing what we set out to do.
Exactly. Right?
Okay, that's
Yeah.
that's what I just wanted to get to, because I don't know that I've seen that so far. And I know a lot is happening to get us there, but the actual reporting on what the targets and the metrics are.
Yeah. So we are doing some of that as part of the reporting out on LG cap and we're under. I think we're under the requirement to to do that measuring and reporting, but we've chosen to, we don't think we can, do an effective job unless we know kind of where we're going and how we're doing. So we're doing that as part of this, and I think this will further cement, those actions are the right actions that we're looking at doing.
Great, thank you.
I just think Mr. Johnson, you'd like to also respond to Councillor Payne's question, and then I will go to Councillor Woodward for his question.
Sorry, thank you. No, I think that Kevin hit all the points accurately. Thanks.
I was just going to say that it's just a map, essentially, of how we're going to get there, because we have these quite, explicit targets in the Nelson Next, and it's just, it's a complicated process to get to those targets. So, as far as I understand, when I talked to Cecilia and Carmen about it, it's just that we know where we want to go. We need that map to get us there, and this is higher map. We need to meet.
Oh, Lord.
We need to meet.
Yes.
Oh, Lord.
Many acronyms.
Yeah, I just look at it, the analogy, say this, it may not be appropriate, but you're on a diet. In the first week, you want to lose 5 pounds. So if you don't know how much you weighed in at the beginning of the diet, you don't know after 1 week if you've made that. So that's what I'm more interested in finding out. We've set hard targets, and now we're going to be able to measure them across the organization more effectively, so we'll be able to see where we are and adjust accordingly.
And sorry, through the chair, to provide some additional information on that metaphor, this would also tell you what weight you're at, but also what you need to eat for that week to lose your target amount.
Perfect. Calories in. Okay, thank you.
Okay. It's a good thing that now I feel poorly that I ate half a cookie and a tart for dessert. Seeing no further questions, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? And that carries, thank you. Moving on to 14B, green burials. Council directed staff to report back on the potential to include green burials at the city cemetery, a park and cemetery master plan, and subsequent review of Memorial Park Cemetery Bylaw number 3305 has been identified as a need and is targeted for 2024. Through this process, green burials will be considered and brought to council for decision. Staff are currently in the process of obtaining a quote for a parks and cemetery master plan for the purpose of 2024 budgeting and work planning. So I wasn't here, but my understanding was that it was a very effective 3-minute public session at the last meeting. And council decided from that they would like to move a recommendation forward. And so we have a recommendation before us. Councillor Lockenberg.
Mayor, if I may, I'd like to modify that recommendation a little bit with the resolution, which is, I'll share it. I've shared it, emailed to all of council as well. So I'll read it if that's okay.
Sure.
So whereas the City of Nelson Bylaw number 3305/2015 does not currently require a grave liner for the purpose of interment, and the use of a grave liner shall hereafter be understood to be at the discretion of the crematory license, at the discretion of the licensee, permit holder, or executor. Whereas the definition of safe interment is set by the Director of Public Works, the cemetery operator, or officially designated appointee, that staff be directed to communicate to interested parties that according to Bylaw 3305/2015, the definition of a casket is not specified and will hereafter be understood to include any material and method that completely wraps the body, including shroud and open pine box, that allows for safe interment. And further, that staff be directed to complete a Parks and Cemetery Master Plan in 2024 that includes a review and consideration of green burials. And further, that the cost of the master plan be brought to council during the budgeting process for the 2024 to 2028 financial plan.
Okay, so just, I know that you sent that to me, and just a reminder that, whereas is help with the explanation, just like we have the RFPs in front of us for our request for decision, they don't need to be part of the recommendation. So the recommendation would be the last 3 paragraphs for those that have this on their screen. That means nothing to the audience. But anyways, it's the last 3, so not the whereases don't have to be included in the recommendation. So I take it that you're moving that, Councillor? And is there a seconder? Councillor Woodward? And I'm looking for, I see some hands for discussion. I saw Payne, Tate, Lockenberg.
I was just up for the seconder, so I don't have a question.
Oh, okay.
I guess
Councillor
maybe
Tate.
a clarity is, so we're not, the 3305 that Councillor Lockenberg talked about, it is included or not included? That's what you said 3 and there's 2 that I see in front of me, but the addition.
I need to go back. Do you have the printed out copy there?
I don't.
Okay.
Do we have stuff on this resolution?
What's that?
Do I have this resolution?
Yeah, I emailed it to everybody this afternoon.
It's just the whereases aren't included in a resolution. It's a procedural thing, not anything
Gotcha.
else. It's just.
Thank you.
He was just, the whereases were to
that's the
explain his
third
first
part,
paragraph.
With take the whereas away.
Yeah.
The third part that he talked about is
Yes,
the
so that he's got 3 things there that he's. Anyhow, yes, wait, Tate is next, and then you are.
As the mover?
You moved, she put her hand up to second it, and then I thought she wanted to also speak, and I'm over here because Councillor Tate threw her hand up right away.
Okay.
Then you're back to you.
I'm fine with that. Just as the mover, I would normally go first, but that's fine. No problem.
I think it helps you. I think it's supposed to be interment, not internment. Just, you know.
Interment.
It's supposed to interment throughout. Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Noted.
Now we're back to Councillor Lockenberg.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak only to add some clarity because I know that's a long, and the whereases are quite intense. So the rationale for this is to put us on a pathway to full green burials while recognizing that the cemetery is at a kind of critical point now where there's a number of people who are looking for plots and they're running out of space. And so just sort of dropping green burials in the full scope onto staff at this point without planning actually is more difficult than it might appear at first. So the planning process doesn't make sense because we may have to then even push beyond the current grounds, past the bridge, past the crematorium, into land that's being currently used by city staff for other purposes beyond the. So it just makes sense. Yes, planning needs to happen. Having said that, green burials, part of green burials is natural burials, which is to bury without the need for the concrete grave liner or the plexiglass caskets, covering on the caskets. And there's a understanding, well, certainly I had this misunderstanding, that the bylaw had those requirements. And if you do a close reading of the bylaw, you could see how it kind of looks like you do, but in fact, you don't. So just the bylaw today, as it stands, permits natural burials today. Now, I don't think, in fact, I know staff doesn't know that because the bylaw is not clear. So this resolution is just clarifying that natural burials are allowed today. So currently, instead of using the concrete grave liners and the casket with the fiberglass covering, you don't need that. You shouldn't need that anymore. If you want to do a natural burial, you can do a natural burial. However, the full green burial involves like a dedicated area of the cemetery. It involves, natural planting on top of it. There's more to it than that. And because I think there's some identified areas, and as I asked staff about that, certainly the back area near the crematorium, it's not as easy as just saying, okay, that's now the green burial area, because some of it's likely already spoken for. And so there's some shuffling and planning that needs to go. So I think this puts us as a great compromise. It sort of respects staff, it respects safety, and it also makes it, I think, clear that green burials is the way to go. And it should ultimately be, hopefully by 2024, 2025, we'll have an area of the cemetery for it.
Can I just, I don't think we've had a chance to look at this, so the only concern I have is that we're complying with the regulations that, cemeteries have to comply with. So can we just add that as a, Sarah, I don't know, as long as, if it complies with the regulations.
The bylaw states that already.
Yeah, we already covered
Yeah, but we just have to make sure, our bylaws do not trump provincial regulations, so we just have to make sure it is consistent with provincial legislation. I don't think your intent is for us not to
for
comply.
Sure. And I have no trouble doing that. The bylaw already says it, so we're just reiterating what the bylaw
We just haven't
says.
updated this bylaw for
a while.
ever. I don't know if we anticipated this interpretation of it or not. We just haven't seen it. We haven't looked at it. So I just think I think either you give us time to make sure we're in compliance, or just add it to the resolution. If we're in compliance, it doesn't have to come
Sure.
back to
I'm
council.
happy to add it to the resolution.
Okay.
So that would read,
On the
That's
condition
fine.
it's in compliance with provincial
So-
regulation.
I think can we just add that? Because he was writing a new motion anyways? Okay. So as long as the seconder is in favor of that?
Yes, I
Okay,
think I
thank you,
second it.
yeah. Okay, I have Councillor Page next and then Councillor Woodward.
Thank you. I appreciate the sentiment of which we're pushing forward to get to a more naturalized burial place. I believe the motion recommendation from staff gets us there. I believe the intent of the motion in front of us is to get us there. I took the opportunity to review the bylaws when seeing this resolution a couple hours ago. Immediately, it stood out to me that the definition of internment included the specificness of a casket and cremated remains, ideally. I think we're in a territory of interpreting a bylaw that we haven't actually asked staff to double check our interpretation of it, and it's baked right into the motion. At this junction, I think I'm opposed to this particular formation of this motion, because I think we may not actually be I don't think the interpretation that's being put forward is actually something we can put our feet on. And I don't think it's a firm foundation. I think we need to actually, if we want to double check that and make sure that that's the case, we should send it to staff and ask if that interpretation is correct. But my reading, even just at a glance in this late hour before this meeting, is that I already see pieces that don't align with that interpretation. And so because the motion rests upon the argument that it is one way, we probably need staff to actually confirm that before we go forward.
Thank you, Councillor Page. Councillor Woodward, on the recommendation.
So, Councilor Ottenberg, you're saying in your reading of this bylaw that if somebody says, I want to be buried with nothing around me, that should be fine. That's what you're saying. But Councillor Page is saying we really need to check that, and the CAO is saying we really need to check that. So, because obviously we don't want to start a process that's contravenes possibly provincial rules, because that could lead to a whole bunch of things. So I just want to, from your reading, you feel that you have a confidence that that's what you're getting from this bylaw. But it's within the motion, there is enough space for staff to double check all of this before we go down the road.
We've now added the amendment, which you were happy with as a seconder.
Yes, I am happy, but I want to make sure that we're doing this with eyes wide open before we make a mistake.
Yeah, so I think it has to be clearly compliance with the current bylaw.
Yes.
Has to be in compliance with provincial legislation.
Yes.
And yeah, I don't know if we necessarily need this resolution if it is in compliance with our regulation. We're not outside in provincial, then for us to let people know that. I don't know if we need a resolution. If this resolution is intent is to interpret the bylaw, I think that's kind of dangerous grounds to be going down. But if it simply is, I think we fit with provincial legislation. I think our bylaw does allow this. Then I think all we need is direction from council. Can you guys go explore this? If that's the case, then let's make sure people know that. And I don't see, unless we find some operational or work safe or some other thing that why we can't, then there's no reason. We're complying with our own bylaws and our own regulations, and then we would be required to do this anyway if someone asked us to to have a burial in this way. So I'm not sure if it's necessary, and I think it's. I'm a bit concerned having a resolution on the books that is interpreting a bylaw that's may or may not be the correct interpretation. I don't know what we do with this resolution if that's the case.
Further to city manager's point, I think there is something to be said for confirming with our operations folks the potential impact that it could have in this change of practice. Understanding that there are a few things with, as I read in the materials provided by the group a few weeks ago, just how that liner and reduces that slumping and what that would look like for normal operations. I think it behooves us to check with the people that currently operate the cemetery to see how we would best be able to do this.
Yeah.
Councillor Lockenberg.
So a few things to respond to. First of all, in the resolution, it does say safe interment, and the definition of safe interment is set by the Director of Public Works, the cemetery operator, or the officially designated appointee. Safety is the only issue here. When talking to staff down there, the issues that we're dealing with are entirely about safety. So if the definition of safety and the standards for safety are set by staff, then that's the entirety of the concern that staff would have. So As far as things like, is it aesthetic? Like, well, that's kind of irrelevant because we're not doing the full green burials. We're talking about natural burials that do the same thing. As far as slumpage of the soil, staff already monitors every grave site for that today. So it's not asking staff to do anything more. If there is some slumpage, then they just top it up and they rebalance it. They do that today. So again, not asking them to do anything more than they're doing today. So what this does is acknowledges what we should be doing. I think what council has said, they'd like to, the direction we'd like to go down. It does it within the bounds of both the current bylaw as well as provincial regulation. The importance of having this sort of direction to staff is that there's a lot of ambiguity about this. The default position right now with staff is to not allow it because the bylaw is unclear. And so they're just defaulting to status quo. And so we need to push against status quo. We need to recognize that this is a time issue. Every year that we wait, there are people that want this type of burial are not going to get it. And particularly this issue is not just another sort of bureaucratic thing that will, process and get done. This is literally a life and death issue. And for people, the last thing they want, the last statement, the last act that they want to have on this earth is a good burial that doesn't harm the environment. So I think everything points to doing this. And I don't think that there's any, the oppositions that have been raised so far, I think, are addressed in the resolution.
Councilor Pinero.
So just a couple of distinctions for myself, maybe mostly, but so we're not I think it's quite clear that we're not talking about green burials as were presented to us the other week, because that would involve changing what we do at the cemetery drastically. This just involves what goes in the grave now. And as far as provincial regulations, I imagine that provincial regulations are province-wide. And so having just been to a funeral in another place where they did just have a shroud and there was no stink made about it, and it's definitely common practice in that cemetery to do that. I imagine that provincial regulations allow that. So what we're worried about really is just the wording in our own bylaw and making sure that we're not contravening our own bylaw. Is that correct?
We just haven't had a chance to look at that.
Yeah.
Normally we would, if this was, could be a notice, a motion that gives staff a chance to, make sure these things that, is our bylaw, we might need an amendment to our bylaw and change some wording because we have some contradictions. That's maybe why it's interpreted a certain way. So I don't see if the direction is for us to review the bylaw and ensure, that we can do what's been asked here, and then we'll do that. And, we're talking, a maximum of, we could probably bring it back at a COW meeting, but a maximum 1 month. So just to, do the thing, properly. If we would have had it, a week ago, and then we probably would have been sitting here today going, yeah, we've looked at this. Yes, we can do it this way. So it's just good practice for us to, because, these bylaws are written a long time ago, and, and if, Councillor, I haven't looked at this bylaw, but I'm not sure if our other staff have, but if, Councillor Page is interpreting it one way and Councillor Lattenberg is a different way, then we should clean it up and make sure it's clear.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, but it's a great catch, right? Like that goes a long way to not solving, but moving in a direction that I think a lot of people that were here last time wanted us to move. And if it's as easy as just a word of clarification in the bylaw, then that's amazing. And I don't, the only thing, like, if there's uneasiness about jumping in that, I think if it's really just a short turnaround, then what's the problem with just having a look at it with those with those eyes, right? Like we're looking to, I mean, you kind of look to interpret it a certain way, and if it needs to be changed, that we can interpret it a certain way, then we can change it. You know, but yeah, I think I don't see it's just the clarification about the green and natural is important, and also provincial regulations, I believe, would permit this sort of thing because I've definitely seen it in other places.
Councillor Payne.
So I guess that's my question is, if natural burials are allowed under the provincial regulations, can our bylaw supersede that? So if someone came to us next week and said, I would like a natural burial,
Well, sorry, just.
then what is our grounds of refusing that?
Right. So, provincial legislation might be enabling, so that allows us to do that. So then it's our bylaw that would operationalize that. So there's lots of legislation that's enabling. It doesn't mean it doesn't, if there was a provincial regulation that said, someone has a right to that, that's different than enables, that at a local level, so.
Okay.
And I would suggest this is probably more enabling, and that's why we have our, if there wasn't a requirement to have our own bylaw, if our own bylaws weren't regulating this, then we can't. Our regulations can't contradict a higher level of government. As long as they can be read in conjunction with them, both schemes can be applied, then they're both applied. If ours contradicts, that says the provincial says you can, ours says you can't, then provincial legislation rules.
And this bylaw was written in 2015, so yeah, I don't know what bylaw it superseded, but that seems fairly recent. It's interesting to me that it wasn't considered at that time, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably just didn't come up at that
Yeah.
time. Yeah. So, yeah, I'd just say, we can certainly, if we're all, if this allows this, then there's nothing at the, it's not like staff is resisting this. This is just, as you said, it sounds like it's unclear and staff interpret it this way, and maybe there's some, and like, if I hear Councillor Page saying, I read some other things, I think that, contradicts this, then we have to clean some of that up to allow this. Right?
Councillor Lockwood.
I just want to emphasize that the issue here that really any of these regulations related to how a person's buried is about safety.
Yeah.
And in the resolution, it specifically acknowledges that the definition of safety and what counts as a safe burial would be set by the Director of Public Works, the cemetery operator, or officially designated appointee. Now, within those bounds of being safe, this is a clear signal to staff, allow natural burials, unless there's a safety issue. Because, like I said, as it is, status quo is not that. And it seems pretty clear to me, staff would require a signal from council to say, yeah, this is what we want to have happen. On the pathway to green burials, absolutely. But as a clear and straightforward first step. So I think everything staff needs to stay compliant, stay safe, and interpret for the purpose of safety is here in this resolution. If you want to then take it away in a month and bring it back, I mean, I don't see why that would be necessary, but that's
If
fine.
it's not necessary, then we can do this tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't need this. If your interpretation of this is correct, we don't need anything from council. We can apply this tomorrow. Right?
Yeah.
All we're saying, if our bylaw isn't correct, or there's some contradiction in there, and one says we can do it, and the other says no, you can't do it because we've defined something a different way or whatever, that's the only thing we're checking. Otherwise, I think we're hearing pretty clearly from council, you would like to see us advance this. And if we can advance it within our current bylaw, then we'll do that. If we don't, then we'll bring it back and say, oh, here, we have to make these changes, then we can advance that. So that's all we're suggesting.
I have a question.
Sure.
Please, may I go? So with regards to the original resolution, which was to review the entire bylaw, is it possible to do what Kevin has said, which is, I think what Rick is saying, which is double check whether what the new resolution can or cannot proceed? Because then you wouldn't need the resolution that Rick has said?
So how can I do this? Can I take a shot at this?
You same as me, yeah, go.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there seems to be some controversy about the paragraph that you added because you've interpreted the bylaw. This is what I'm hearing from a few people who are commenting, Councillor Page, I think Councillor Pinero, just that. So the thing here would be is that you could all vote against the resolution that was moved by Councillor Lockenberg, seconded by Councillor Woodward. And then we could have another resolution put on the table, which could be the resolution that's just before us in our packages, which is the review of the plan, which would include the bylaw review, and then to bring it forward. Those are some options that you
Okay,
have.
so can I tweak one of those options, which would be just jumping off of what you just said? So we could vote down the one that has been firsted and seconded, and then go back to the original. But is there a way to ask staff to double check whether natural burials are already allowed within the bylaw, and then just have like what are those things called, like a notice of understanding or whatever the heck it's called, where you're like, this is how it is, this is the truth, here it is. What's that called?
We've heard,
Information bulletin?
Media release.
That's not what I'm thinking.
Memorandum of understanding, I think is where she's going.
don't know.
But I'm just interpreting that. I just sit here, just, I'm just the listening guy.
yeah, I think we're, if I'm hearing council right, you want us to look at whether we can do natural burials. We'll go look at our bylaw. If we have some ambiguity, we'll talk to our legal staff and say, is there any changes we have to make to do this? We don't need this resolution to do that. If we have this resolution and we still have to do that, then we need to do that to make sure that the bylaw does allow what you're hoping or you believe it does. So we're gonna have to do that work one way or the other. I don't, you're given direction right here. I don't need a resolution to hear you that, that council wants us to look at natural burials and expedite that, and we'll go look at that. And if we're in compliance with our bylaws and provincial regulations, and then, if you want to show up tomorrow and ask for a green burial, then, or a natural burial, then we would say, yeah, that's allowed under our bylaw.
So do we need to, are we saying we need to strike this down and just add a piece to the original?
I don't even think we.
You
I don't
even need that?
I don't think we even need the
Okay.
original, because we're saying in our 2024 work plan, this is already on our plate. We're going to come back at budget time and say, are you willing to fund this going forward? I don't think it advances the green burial part of it.
But it gives people
If you
an
want to
option.
advance that now,
You can be buried as normal in a casket, you can be cremated,
sounds that
or
way.
you can be buried without a casket.
from Councillor Lautenberg's interpretation, he believes that's what the bylaw says now, and we'll confirm that. If that's what it says, and we can do that, then yes.
That seems
Correct.
like Occam Razor. It's much simpler than. Thank you, Council Lautenberg,
Just
for doing that.
to be clear, I don't understand the difficulty of just passing the resolution. It's on the floor. It doesn't. There's no reason not to pass it. It's the signal from council. Otherwise, pull it back or vote for it. I mean, the signal to.
I'm just
staff
a
and the
bit
community.
concerned if we have a resolution on the floor that interprets a bylaw a certain way and that's not correct, what do we do with that?
It's interpretation versus
So,
intention.
so what do we,
Okay. Well,
what do
just
we
to be
say?
clear, I get
Unless
it.
it's wrong, we could add that to the resolution, but I don't know if that helps, right?
I get it, but I'll just challenge to staff and to the rest of the council that the resolution doesn't interpret the bylaw other than to point out that the definition of a casket is not specified, and it's not. There is no definition of a casket.
And maybe we need one. I don't know. That's all I'm
Sure.
saying. Like you could pass a resolution, staff investigate whether natural burials are permitted under our current bylaw.
Sure.
That could be, that's direction. And if you want something on the table that gives clear
So
direction.
what you're saying is even better. I mean, this is even better.
Yeah, that's-
that have a resolution on the table that says
Yeah.
to allow for natural burials.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will.
Then now you're not interpreting the bylaw. You just
Sure, fair enough.
asking
I
us.
will then, with that being said, I'll withdraw my
Okay.
motion. Maren, if it's okay with you, I'll put a new motion on the floor saying that,
So hold on, I think
Can we just do this? Can we just,
we vote
look,
it down or
so yeah,
what?
we're gonna vote this down, just to keep it
sure,
clean, because it's really gotten messy, because we've already kind of friendly amended it, and I just think that we need to make sure that if we're gonna be doing something, and maybe what I would ask is, how are we for time?
8 o'clock.
We're done.
8 o'clock, that we're gonna vote on this. I think we're gonna vote it down, and we're gonna take a 5-minute break while we figure out what we want, because so far I'm not too sure of what I wanted out of this has even happened, and you haven't heard from me, but that's okay. So we have a motion in front of us. All those in favor of the current motion, please raise your hand. All those opposed, please signal. The motion is defeated. So, everybody, we're gonna take a 5-minute break, just so we get language and concept correct, and people can go to have a bio break. And we'll be back in 5 minutes.
No, hey, Chris, Jerry, what is that thing called when we put like a notice that explains? I can't hear you.
Yeah, that's the simplest thing.
I've seen it in other places. Because like,
I want the original.
But safety's already in there. So we don't need to say this again.
It's pretty
So
informal.
I think it's just a direction of,
Process.
staff to investigate whether natural barrels are permitted under. And if not, investigate what amendments would need to be made.
they are.
Then,
So people
don't need to do anything.
I got it.
It's a poster of truth. It's a tautologic announcement.
Are you talking about when we used to do,
Well, like, here's all the
for the record thing?
For the record.
Thank you. Tautological documents is also fine.
We do have to look.
I think this could be up for the record if it turns out to be fine, but actually it brings the above. But anyway.
Yeah, maybe just some clarity, like it's smart, regardless.
Yeah.
I'm reading it now, and I don't think anybody's really gone through it.
You have to go 6B. 6. Where am I? The part that's tricky is the word interment in the definitions, and 6.5A.
Investigate whether natural barrels.
Those are the spots that are a tiny bit tricky.
Yeah, I was looking at that 6.5.
6.5A says 1 meter to the vault, surface of the vault.
Do we need that second?
You have to
Is
have
that
all
gonna be captured in the word?
If you do, that's pretty defined.
no,
Caskets are also defined in the provincial legislation.
Yeah, a vault, because vault is the top part of a casket.
Yeah, Rick's
So does
gonna
that
do
one
that.
necessitate-
I mean, my concern is, I wanted what was there, because I've been asking for years
Or nothing.
for
And then still go
the
ahead
master
to
plan to be
review it.
reviewed, because
And
we
we can look at the
aren't
fees
charging
and all of
enough.
that stuff.
We're running out of land, whether or not you now get thrown in the ground or whatever.
But it doesn't say, but if there is no vault or grade liner, still 1 meter toward the body, because the intention wasn't to not have one of those things.
Yes.
It's intention versus interpretation. Yeah, it's tricky. Tricky.
Well, that would be investigated.
your-
I mean, that's because it
what's
says
your
to investigate
position?
the grade.
Well, I know,
This is the only reason I
was
wanted it, because I wanted this reviewed.
You know that already.
Can you speak up in like that? People aren't signing down.
I'm sure I'll make it up.
The fact that we have to review in with it, green burials, I don't really care. Green burials, first burials, I don't care.
That's
We
not
do that as
you,
well.
it's
I want the master plan. We're not charging you enough for regional district.
So I think you just.
There's 1 meter.
Once it's reviewed, that is the new
Between
plan.
the,
I don't think, it's not like we do that in 2024, and we don't implement until 2028.
However,
There's gonna be,
task is not
yeah,
defined
there's
by
gonna
having
be,
a
you know,
liquor.
through that master plan,
So-
identify the area.
1 meter, which means.
All of the things that you need to know,
look at this and clean these up.
it creates, you know what it does? The master plan creates a work plan for how we accomplish what we put into the master plan. It's just like Nelson Next. It's like, I have the plan,
Wasn't that
and then it will tell like what parts of the cemetery can be used, what parts are already reserved for something, and that's why we need the master plan. And that's
Participated from the resident side in, being public engaged to do the plans. I don't necessarily see what happens
Yeah.
after that in the plan.
yeah. So that's
You're saying when the plan gets passed. That's it. That's what I need to know.
yeah.
Thank you.
That's the tricky part. That's why I like.
What's that?
That's why I like what was in this resolution. But
Come down to
we'll do it.
Yeah, it's not fast there. It's too long. And it's
Just telling you, not telling anyone else. It's fine. Just need to feel better.
Threading a needle. I was not.
If it's a safety issue, it's in the resolution. Copy staff, there's no safety issue. It doesn't make any sense. And
Okay,
for people to
make sure you've got whatever you've got down, and if you could send it to Sarah.
sending it right now.
Because they were like too thin for a while. They were too big.
Sorry, it's coming.
Well, he's going to get water, so I won't bang my gavel.
Thank you.
The whole, there was no anticipating. Was that supposed to be? I was there at 6 a.m. Yeah.
Somebody else?
Okay.
Was that on Keith's?
I
Yeah.
think he put it on Nelson.
I'm just seeing if it.
Out consent.
Yeah, you should have it.
Thank you very much.
So interesting.
I don't know. You can, make it less formal.
Is that,
Correct.
Yeah,
is that chat GPT right in that?
That's Chat GPT cleaning it up. Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty good though.
Pretty good though, what? Whatever.
The new resolution.
Oh.
And then can we leave in the lines that say that that's after we tried to complete a Parks and Cemetery master
So
plan in
it's hard for me
2024?
just to listen to it. It's not impossible.
Well, my
I
master
prefer to
plan.
see it, but she can't direct,
And strike out the consideration of green
She can't put it on
burials?
the
Why,
Maybe we can make
Jesse?
3 resolutions.
Theoretically, should.
Can we,
Oh, I'm
can
just
we
so
not just
nice.
leave the resolution the same
Nice
and
and
add and add
well.
further?
Try hard.
Can we have, sorry, what? 2?
Stop all of that.
I'm thinking Keith will just go with what Rick has and then add what's already on here, but we'll just strike the,
That can be a second
Review of-
resolution, yeah. The bylaw?
can we not have that?
Like, I did put wording in the chat too.
Yeah, like as another,
Do we have chat?
I don't want that lost. That's the part that
I
I
didn't know we
want
had
done.
chat. How do you get chat?
You have to sign into.
So we could do the one about the bylaw review and
No,
then,
we're not in your WebEx, Keith.
I
We're here in
know,
person.
and then we'll do that. We'll
Signal
just
us if you
strike
go
out
and need
the
something
review
here.
because that'll already be in them.
I can't chat.
Or just reply.
Like, to me, this is
I was
just an
only on
and
like
further.
6
Keep
different
So we're gonna do,
communications.
we're gonna do
And
2.
further.
Okay.
Because we're gonna do mine, but we're gonna strike because you're already gonna get that question answered in the first part.
Got it.
But I wanna make sure that we are directing for the work plan and the budget.
Yeah.
Because it is work that needs to be done.
Perfect.
I don't want that
Yes.
lost.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
100% needed.
Absolutely.
And the idea of green burials can't happen if we don't do the review, so, right? So we gotta do the full review.
For the green burials, yeah.
It would be optimal in the
Yeah, the-
long
the
term, which is
planning
what we're
has to
here
happen.
for,
Has to happen, right?
strategic
Yeah.
view, yeah.
For the full green barrels, yeah.
So you,
'Cause
this
you
is
don't know
all
what-
really just a clarification of rules.
Currently,
Oh, we might
yeah.
have
And
to-
direction.
Or maybe make some amendments.
Allow natural burials. Chris had a quick question. Thanks, there's.
combine the two?
No, I mean, there's two separate ones. I don't want to get it all
Things that
messed
are-
up.
Okay, so I have
Yeah.
this one.
Main
Council
ones.
take going down here and then take the 1 meter.
Yeah, it says vault. It doesn't say or no vault.
And there's this distinct lack of definitions in the definition.
Right, but intent, right?
But the intent,
Until it goes against you, and then you'd be like, the intention was. Be careful with that argument. You won't want it later.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, that is.
Yeah, no
never been
definition
taken
goes
in
into
this
both
case,
ways.
it's so clear, or like, it's entirely
Okay.
safe.
There's no definition I could bury myself in tires.
We're back.
Okay, did everybody have fun? Get outside? Run around the block? Get some air?
Blow bubbles.
We turned on the AC for a minute, so it's going to be a little bit noisier. So I do believe that we have got another resolution. We actually have now 2 resolutions. And the first resolution we'll give a try to, and if we could have the corporate officer read out the first resolution, please.
That council directs staff to investigate the permissibility of natural barriers as per the existing bylaw. In the event that natural barrier burials are not currently permitted, staff are directed to propose necessary amendments to the bylaw in order to accommodate such burials.
Okay. Can we have a mover? I take it, council, oh my good lord, the whole team and everybody in council chambers moved the motion? Is there a seconder, Councillor Woodward? And so we're just gonna go, because it seems like it's my lucky day, all those in favor of the resolution? And that is carried. Okay, now we're gonna do the second part that the mayor kind of asked to have, so we're gonna have the second resolution. Sarah, could you please read us the second resolution?
That staff be directed to complete a parks and cemetery master
Yes.
plan review in
No,
2024?
master plan in 2024.
Okay, that staff be directed to complete a parks and cemetery master plan in 2024, and further that the costs for the master plan be brought to council during the budgeting process for 2024-2028 financial plan.
Been moved by Councillor Kane, seconded by Councillor Woodward. All those in. Yep.
Sorry.
Oh, no.
I think I have an amendment that
Okay.
we should return to the original because I just want
Want to put in the consideration of green burials? I don't mind.
Yeah, I do because
Oh.
natural and green burials are
Yeah,
different.
that's
I
true.
mean, the natural burials are
Is
part
on
of
the
green burials,
path.
but there's
Okay.
more to it. So we need
Okay.
Just the
Okay.
original.
just the original.
Okay, so just back to the original. I'm
Yeah.
fine. I'm fine with that. It's just that we really need,
Yeah.
for multiple reasons, not about whether you're being buried natural or green, we have needed to review
Okay,
the
so
cemetery
I'll
plan.
move the original
Thank you.
and then I'll read it.
And then seconded by Councillor Lockwood. Okay, go for a
The
read.
original, from the original agenda, said the staff be directed to complete a parks and cemetery master plan in 2024 that includes a review and consideration of green burials, and further the costs for the master plan be brought to council during the budgeting process for the 2024-2028 financial plan.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Question, Councillor Tate.
I do actually have a question about this. The reason that parks is included in cemetery master plan is because it just lives in the same department and operations?
Yeah, the
Question mark?
cemetery is a
The
park.
cemetery.
I know it is a park, but a parks master plan would include all of the parks, question mark? Yeah,
Correct.
that sounds like a big plan.
It's a big,
It's a big needed plan.
big needed plan.
Just checking, thank you.
Some will require
Some facilities will require obviously a lot more attention than others, i.e. the cemetery park.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay, so any further questions? All those in favor? And that carries. Okay, whew. Thank you, councillors. And on to 15, we have reports. We have a report from Finance. Can I have a mover to receive for information, please?
Move.
And that's been moved by Councillor Tate, seconded by Councillor Woodward. Was there any questions on the finance statements? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Item number 2, development services, building permit statistics. We need a motion to receive for information. Moved by Councillor Tate, seconded by Councillor Woodward. Any questions or concerns, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, and that's carried. Excellent. Item number 16, notice of motion.
Wait, sorry.
Whoop.
Correspondence is in there.
Minutes?
Oh, sorry.
In 15, it says includes correspondence.
Right,
So I have a
sorry.
question on
Okay,
correspondence.
I didn't turn the page, sorry. I've also got information items.
Okay. Do you want to go
My mistake.
first?
So minutes of councils and commissions. So we've got minutes from the Nelson Housing Committee, the Cultural Development Committee, and the Nelson Public Library. And we need a motion to receive for information, or if anybody wants to pull any of those out. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Tate, seconded by Councillor Woodward. All those in favor of receipt for information? And that's carried. Okay, and it does say information, including correspondence, minutes, etc. Councillor Payne, you had a question about some of the correspondence.
I do have a question about the correspondence process. I find it very challenging to receive a 150-page package of correspondence dated between April and June 2nd. I can't remember the date in April. I thought I'd written it down. I feel very challenged to be a responsive counselor when I don't get that information in a timely way, and I'm hoping that we'll be hearing shortly on how we can change that. We got 95 letters on one subject between May 12th and May 16th. Many of those individuals repeatedly asked me if we had received correspondence from them. And I was saying no, because I had not. Trust is a very fragile part of our job. And if we're not being responsive to individuals who are reaching out to us, and I can't be responsible if I don't have the information. So I really would like to understand what process we can put in place to improve that. Because I feel now that my job is going to be reaching out to so many of those people whom I know, and when they asked me if I'd received their correspondence, I honestly said no, I had not. But it had been received. So that's challenging for me, and I would like to have a better understanding of what we can do about that. The correspondence package we received is up to June 2nd. So now we have, again, another month of, I don't know what the regular process has been, but I think this is an opportunity for us to demonstrate excellent city governance. That's what I have to say about correspondence. I'm interested in how I can be part of the process of making this better so that people feel heard.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward has his hand up.
So a bulk of those were form letters with the signature. And in the last term, there have been sort of letter writing campaigns where we got, 100 form letters. So I think, form letters, you read one and that's the letter, and then people sign off on it. So I think, like if you took that form letter out of the package here, that would have been a much more, 20 or 30.
50.
But, so I think it's an efficiency, especially around the form letter piece. But I understand what you're saying in terms of like wanting to respond. There is another element of like, if we're all responding individually, that can get very complicated. So ultimately we should be responding as a council, and the mayor is the person who does that typically, because if each one of us is responding, it could, it can get out of hand pretty quickly. So I think there's a fine balance of trying to find a pathway through this kind of letter writing, emails, and that is efficient and responsive, but not each of us individually doing it. So that's my comment.
Yep, hang on, I'm just gonna finish with the council comments. I'm gonna let Sarah from Corporate Services respond. Keith, you have your hand up? Sorry,
Yeah,
Councilor
I
Page.
just, yeah, of course. I agree with Councillor Payne. The principle inside of that is certainly there were conversations and decisions that are also being made in that timeline for which we haven't received the breadth of public communication on the matter. That is consideration. That is part of the information tool that we use to gauge where we may want to land our decisions. So aside from some of it being templated, which certainly happens a lot of the time, it's good for us to know when and where, how people are reaching out before we're having those discussions. And so I know our corporate deputy officer had said that they were looking already to improve the process, and I say by all means let's continue to improve the process, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Really appreciate it. We know in our department that we don't have a great process. It's one of the things, and we have talked with all of council about this previously, that we do need to tighten up the process and figure out what's going to work for you, because what worked for the council before you doesn't necessarily work for you. And we are not mind readers. I think you know that. So we need to work as a team to come up with a solution. We do have a policy. We have tried, but like I say, what works for one council doesn't necessarily work for every council. We've also been given direction to provide some things in the agenda, some correspondence in the agenda, but not all correspondence in the agenda. So you have to understand that we get mixed messages. So what we're trying to do is accommodate what works best right now for us as staff. And if we need to work on that with you and figure out what's going to work for you, then obviously we need to do that.
That would be great. I would love to be part of that solution if there's anything.
Well, you are part of council, so I'm assuming you would be part of that.
I don't understand how I can be part of that, though.
Well, I think
I guess I need to know the policy that we're talking about.
Okay, so you
I mean,
probably do.
familiar
And
with
the
that.
other thing, though, and
I
if I
already do.
can,
I
is
don't
that
already.
we do have a plan to go through the procedure bylaw, and that would be a really nice time to sit with council and figure out what a good process for the whole shebang would be. Okay?
Yeah, so that is where council influence is your policy. And so I'm hearing from the corporate officer that we're looking at that policy, and but we'll share that policy with you.
Sure, it's, you did receive it when.
We did, in November, I think, maybe a week or two after we'd been inaugurated.
So you
Yeah,
can
we
refer to
can-
it whenever you like.
Yeah,
I can.
yeah. We'll have a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Okay. Seeing none, I think that takes us to the end of the regular meeting. And so we need to go back into in camera. And we don't need to read the reason for going in again because we just recessed. Oh, right, no, it's different, right, because it's a different section of the community charter. So item number 17, resolution to close the meeting to the public, and that is the opinion of council. The public interest requires that persons other than members of council and staff and any approved audiences be excluded from this meeting, and the meeting of council continue under section 91G of the community charter with regards to litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. So, moved by Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Tate. All those in favor? Thank you, and that carries.